welcome to the latest episode of The Mothers. We're still here. The Mothers is a place where we get to chat with badass moms and hear them reflect on their lives through the lens of motherhood. How has being a mother informed their priorities, their purpose, their sense of identity and sense of self? Were there trade-offs and sacrifices, and over time, do they still see them as trade-offs and sacrifices? Does it get better at a distance? And also, what were the borderline impossible, if not truly impossible things, and how did they get through it? How did they do it, and how are they doing? For now, you have me, Sarah, and I'm joined by the amazing, prolific, my favorite safe space, Vee, who will be your guides on this adventure. But she and I are going to gab for our first couple episodes, and then we're working behind the scenes to get our first round of guests, and this will eventually turn into more of an interview situation. So you folks in on the early train are getting some special access to some special people.
That's right.
Yes, including occasionally a small child that hides on Vee's lap, also known as her baby.
Baby.
Who chimes in occasionally with important thoughts and feedback.
Yes.
In many ways.
In all bodily forms.
All bodily functions. Before we get into today's episode, as always, please and thank you for listening, review, and follow. I also recently realized this. If you actually follow a podcast, you don't miss an episode because it gets flagged for you. So
that's very cool.
It works for everybody. So thank you so much for doing that in all the places. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're working on the YouTubes. We're actually in all these other places that podcasts show up, but nobody really would know that.
Uses them?
Amazon Podcast. There's some other iHeartRadio podcast. So anyway, we're in all the places. And if we're not, let me know.
And if we're not listed on your preferable platform.
Yes, exactly.
Send us an email.
Because we want to be there. Oh, we're also live on Instagram. Holy shit.
Yeah.
We made it. We're trying to figure out how to make it work, but we are absolutely there and
still not
getting in a rhythm.
Those puzzle layouts.
No tiles. No
we
tiles.
will be there.
But we are the Mothers Pod on the Instagram. So yeah, thanks for being with us and supporting us. We're so excited. Quick check in on where we've been since we last talked, Vee.
Yes.
Tell me what you've been up to.
Last week was a blur. I don't even know what happened between last time we talked and today.
I know. It felt like it had been a year.
I do know that the most important birthdays of the year happened.
Yes. Yes. Because this is when the Aquarii turn whatever next age. And obviously the Aquarii are leaders of society.
You're welcome.
But thank you for that shout out.
You mother, my mother, both had birthdays.
Exactly, that's true.
So that was a good week.
Yes.
What we have on my end, no major updates either way, which I guess is a good thing. I'll take it.
Yeah.
I got a massage on Sunday, which is really nice.
That is excellent.
And it was amazing. I went to a Thai massage place, very bare bones. It was not fancy by any means. And the woman was concerned how tight it was. She was
no.
And I was
no.
She was
Did you go in without child? Because that's a big step too. I assumed, but I just wanted to clarify. I could also see you in there holding him.
I'm breastfeeding. Actually, on that note, my only other update was that I did start I'm pivoting to freelance EA work, and I started with my first client this week.
No way.
And I had my first call on Monday, and I had to breastfeed the entire thing.
That's amazing.
And I don't think they knew.
No.
So I'm very proud of myself.
I know. That's awesome.
Multitasking.
I do feel like there's a whole theme of breastfeed, free the nipple, have it be everywhere. But I also think there should be a side, a parallel theme that's didn't know I was breastfeeding, did ya?
I mean, I am right now. I don't know if...
Exactly. All the ways it's all happening.
Yeah. It just, yeah. So those are my updates.
That's huge. The one addition, it was my birthday and we ran away to Miami and...
Well-deserved trip.
My husband, Jason, is amazing at finding great hotels, great ways to splurge and make me feel special. So I really do sincerely love him the most.
Oh.
Good job, Jason. Yay.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I was looking back on what my week has been like, and unintentionally, this turns out it's my like Women's Health Week. Like all of my women's health things are happening. So I had a pap smear yesterday, and then I have a mammogram on Thursday, I think.
Girl.
It's on the calendar. I'll be there. And then the unexpected cherry on top was that a friend of mine hosted this discussion at her house focused on raising awareness for Boston Medical Center, which is like downtown, south end of Boston, all focused on kind of like serving the underserved, healthcare equity. But she brought in, as part of the event, which it was like, I don't know, 40, 50 women, was hosted by the chief of OBGYN at BMC, this rock star woman, Dr. White, who, to the Aquarii point, it was her birthday recently. So she is also on the list of awesome women who are Aquarius.
Powerful.
And she really was. She was like so normalizing of everything, so easy to talk to, so like a champion of women's health in general. And the discussion was focused on menopause, womp womp, which is having a moment. So I shouldn't say womp womp. Menopause, yay! What a triumph!
A moment.
It is. It's very cool to talk about menopause right now.
Trendy topic. Everybody wants it.
Or maybe I'm just getting heavily targeted.
I'm like, is it? Where are we having that? No, but that's good.
But yeah. Before, exactly. I don't have much more to say on the topic, except I did want to give a shout out. I heard through this event, BMC has this awesome program called a Birth Sister program, where, because gross generalizations, many women that show up there are happily pregnant on purpose, and this is all part of a grand plan, and there's plenty of support. Many don't have that luxury, and they make sure that folks can get paired up with other women who act kind of like a doula style, like emotional support through pregnancy, during labor, and then afterwards. And I was just like, it's funny sitting in this like group of women as someone who, I don't know, hates needing help and hates being supported. I also like cry when it's offered, because obviously everyone wants that. So anyway, that's amazing. Shout out to this program and Dr. White, who really did an awesome job.
Amazing.
It was also another one of those topics where I'm like, so many things that women do are kind of just like this underground experience. Doesn't have to be, but it was just funny, only women there speaking hush hush about what we are not allowed to talk about elsewhere.
Prohibition era.
A little bit. Yeah. Speakeasy.
Yeah.
So anyways, it's Women's Health Week for Sara.
Well, you're so brave.
Thank you so much.
It can be really hard. It sucks. Also, it's just like, I don't know, with all that stuff, you're like, there has to be a better way for this now.
Yes. Do I have to have my boobs smushed between like two plastic boards? Not even a board. They make me think of, what's the board that you clip on something? They're like here, so you can write on it. Like, thank you so much. Yes. One key symptom of menopause is brain fog. And I asked a clarifying question. I was like, I often wander into the kitchen and forget why I'm there. Is this brain fog? And they were like, well, not on its own. That happens to everybody.
Oh, okay. They're like, oh, I'll see you.
They're like, no. Brain fog is more like, there's no reason, like, if you have stress, you're not sleeping, all these things, and you're distracted, that's one thing. It's more like, if everything in your life is consistent and you can't remember why you walked into the kitchen, maybe you should start looking at it.
Go to a doctor?
Yeah. So
you're fine.
Anyways,
yeah, your mammogram's gonna be great.
Yeah,
giving me like war flashbacks to the last one I had. Like, no, it was fine. But what was it, like 4 weeks postpartum and milk? It's just, and I was just like, I'm so sorry.
Yes,
humiliating. But it's okay. It was amazing. Great support women there, and it's cool that we have the resources and technology. But I'm also like, let's update this.
It is. Yes, I know. Can it just be a body scan that we walk through? Why must we feel pain? I agree.
Prenovu, not sponsored. What is that? Prenovu. You know what I'm talking about? Preventative, like, MRIs that people have been getting.
It's called Prenovu?
It starts with a P. I'll have to look it up after. And people, you could pay, like, out of pocket. And, of course, insurance doesn't cover it. But they do, like, a full body scan and check, like, everything. Prenuvo.
I hit the Google hard and
pretty incredible.
It delivered. Sometimes it still does. Wow. Okay.
I
This
think
is
it
what I
should
want to
just be
do.
like normal, like everyone should get that.
I
A
agree. Oh,
lot of
and
people
yes.
have found like advanced or really early detected things. It's
Yes.
incredible.
Ugh, amazing. In
Yeah.
this world, we're
Anyways.
also losing all sorts of support for women's health. So, but we won't
Yeah.
talk about that here. We will talk
Yeah.
about that. Well, maybe we will talk
Later.
about it here eventually. Maybe we'll get
Oh,
Dr.
maybe
White on
Dr.
here
White.
and we'll
Jing.
talk. Yes.
That would be cool.
Ugh. Okay,
Okay.
before we get too enraged, let's talk about a show that makes my heart sing. It makes me laugh and cry. Shrinking. Ugh.
Spoiler alert.
I know, thank you. I wrote it on my notes. I was like, we must say this out loud. Spoiler alert for
We
the
talk
whole
about
episode.
everything.
Yes,
Yeah.
we're going to talk about everything that happened in season 1 and season 2. So if you really, really care about plot lines,
If you haven't seen it
maybe
yet.
watch it first. But also, if you love V and me more, you could listen anyway.
Exactly.
And yes, so we will set the table briefly. How's our little dude? Do you want me to mute you for a second?
Maybe. I'm wondering if I should quickly change his diaper.
Yeah,
Do you
go
mind
for
if I
it.
do that super
Go
quick?
for it. So Shrinking, quick summary of what the show deals with. But we have our main character, Jimmy, played by Jason Segel, who V occasionally, and I hope it's actually inaccurate, otherwise I'm just a total dick. But Jason Segel, not Jason Segal. So Jimmy and his high school age daughter, Alice, who's a beautiful individual, they're navigating life after the tragic death of his wife, Tia, in a car crash. And that's not really the spoiler alert. If you've watched one episode, they basically tell you that. And so this family is surrounded by warm, hilarious, generous, witty, like the friends and colleagues that you all want to have, the ones that you can have witty banter with and also go deep with. Jimmy is also a psychologist. So we see him and his colleagues who are the bomb. We have Paul, casually played by Harrison Ford, amazing, and Gaby, who's just, I haven't met anyone who isn't like, she's amazing. How can I both be her and be her best friend? But she's played by Jessica Williams. So those are Jimmy's primary colleagues. And then we see them kind of, working on helping all of their patients, also obviously kind of helping themselves in the process. The vibe is very Ted Lasso minus the sports, which makes sense because it's produced by the same crew. So Ted Lasso folks also did Shrinking. And they also did Scrubs, which like throwback to, was that early 2000s? Another great show. What I also love is that across all those shows, you see some similar actors popping up, which is the best. And I always enjoy giving them a shout out. Like if anyone remembers, the janitor from Scrubs makes a cameo, a meaningful cameo, is a meaningful character in Shrinking, I believe the second season. So anyway, there's so much to say about Shrinking. So many angles we could take it. It's a show that grabs your heart, makes you laugh. That kind of like deep tingly feeling of I'm both so happy and I also want to cry. Like deeply sentimental, just beautiful. But today, Gaby and I wanted to chat about the role of mothers and motherhood in Shrinking, because it is, even as I was watching it the first time, and particularly now that I'm watching it with a specific eye towards that topic, it is all over the show. And there are a few key mother figures. I think most of this will focus on Liz, who is a neighbor of Jimmy and Alice. She is played by Christa Miller, and my sleuthing revealed that she is in real life married to Bill Lawrence, who is the producer of this show and also the producer of Scrubs and Ted Lasso, along with others. So shout out to them. I don't have your names in front of me. So we could start on like kind of Liz first, and then as it comes up, there are other mother figures, literal mothers or people acting as mothers, that whole concept. Before we dive into Liz, let me just set the stage a little bit to who Liz is. So she is the neighbor of Jimmy and Alice. She's married to a wonderful, sort of classic male dude dad, but like thoughtful, smart dude dad, not like delinquent dad, Derek. She's a mother of 3 grown boys who are 20 something, just into college and out of college. And after Tia died, who was Alice's mother, Jimmy's wife, Liz stepped in to support Alice, as Jimmy really sort of understandably totally fell apart after the death of his wife in a tragic car accident. So before I carry on, let me check in with V. How's the team?
We're getting there. He's falling back
Yeah.
to sleep. That was
Yeah.
a major blowout, which he loves to do when we're talking. I think he just gets so
He just
excited
wants
to
to
hear your
contribute.
voice or
I
whatever.
think he might be just supremely relaxed when he hears us talking.
He said, yeah, sicker, yeah.
Our
Truly.
kids also will only poop sometimes. They'll be like constipated, and then Jason will hold them and they'll be like, okay, this feels like a nice time to do this.
He hasn't pooped in 24 hours, so that was 24
Oh my God,
hours.
that is what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Anyway, how's our man?
He's like about to fall asleep. I feel like I'm going to try to put him upstairs in his.
Okay. Fuck yeah.
So, do you mind if I
do it?
Leave for a second
Yeah.
And then I'll come back?
Yeah.
Thanks for your patience.
Oh
Sorry.
my God. Deep breath. Have some Fresca.
I know, right?
Fresca is the best. Actually,
So
can we make a private goal of getting Fresca to like sponsor this? Because it's underappreciated. And I'm sure, who are they sponsoring?
I don't think anyone exactly. Yeah. I was going to say like who drinks it.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm pretty sure that's attainable.
Fresca and like
goal.
Mother Denim. Yeah, exactly. Just putting out in the universe, Fresca, if you're listening.
If anyone wants.
You know who I bet drinks Fresca?
Who?
Liz.
Oh,
from Shrinking.
For sure. Because it's like diet.
Yeah.
She's like, okay,
she loves it.
So let's get into it.
We've teed up who Liz is. And kind of her arc throughout the show is she starts off as kind of stepping in as proxy mother figure for Alice after her mother died in this car accident, which is horrendous. So one thing that I wanted to say first was that when I first watched the show in my prior living arrangement, which was working full time and watching this, and obviously parenting on the side or in between or all the time, I really hated Liz. And I found her annoying and irky. And I think I shared Gaby's perspective where Gaby started, which was like, and this comes up frequently, I want to break it apart, but very, very like, you're just a mom, or like, you're such a mother. Yes.
Which was like this negative thing. Yes.
Very much. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do think that when I went back to rewatch it for this, I had a very different take, like much more sympathetic and feeling much more oriented towards how she's doing all of this stuff for everybody and nobody's giving her any credit. She's just getting all this grief. And one thing that I'll mention that I want to hear what you think, but the very first episode, the whole thing opens. It's the middle of the night. Liz and her husband Derek are in their bedroom.
Forgot about this.
Yeah. At night, and they're woken up. It's like 3 a.m. And Liz is throwing the pillow at Derek, being like, it's your turn to do it. It's your turn to do it. Like unfortunately, like many moms end up saying to their partners. And all of this is set up, I'm sure, on purpose to trick the audience into thinking this is like, they have to go deal with their child. But it turns out it's Jimmy next door who's partying, drinking in his post death of his wife spiral. But Liz gets up, goes outside to deal with Jimmy, and without any appreciation really from Jimmy. It's just sort of this like dutiful action. And she comes back into the bed and falls back asleep. And it just, to me, like kind of tees up this whole thankless role that Liz plays for Alice primarily in the beginning, and then a little bit, in pockets along the way too. But yeah, what was your take on Liz? How do you feel about Liz?
So interesting. I mean, I do think that I also just finished it. So I watched it recently. It's all fresh on my brain. And I do think in the beginning, I was like, oh, she's such an annoying, overbearing character. But then I feel like maybe 4, 5 episodes in, I was like, aw, poor Liz. Like, I felt bad. And I was just like, she's just trying to do her thing and find her thing. And she actually is so helpful. And no one's thanking her. And it's like, it's all of this work that she's doing to show up for everyone. Sean, Jimmy, Paul, like all of these people, Alice. And like, no one's thanking her. They're all just giving her shit. And it
totally
made me sad.
Yes. I very much, I think one of the other scenes that really brought that home for me was when Alice has a parent teacher conference. And
oh my God.
Liz, shows up on time. Jimmy arrives late. Jimmy walks in and Liz is already sort of in this very chummy convo with, I don't know, teacher slash principal. I don't even, yeah. And then she's like, oh, Jim. And they're like, oh, we started without you. We weren't sure if you're going to come. And then he jumps in. And this whole time, Liz is very deferential to Jimmy seemingly and very respectful. Like she'll offer things and she'll be like, oh, you probably have this, like go for it. And not in a like put down way of like, oh, maybe you probably have this, but you don't. But very like, oh, I'm sorry. Like you go, you know what's going on. But she knows all of the things that a classic mother figure knows that a classic dad figure is less in tune with. She knows her class preferences, how her friendships are going. She's doing really like a lot on soccer and wants to take a pause from like the debate club or something. And
Yeah.
all these things, and then you have Jimmy who they ask about college and Jimmy's like, "Oh, I know this
She
one,
wants to
basically.
go.
Here are the
Yeah.
places." Yeah, exactly. And then at that point, Liz is like, "Oh, clearly you got this. Like, let me leave." And Jimmy's like, "Yes, thank you." And Jimmy the whole time is like, "Yeah, fucking leave," basically.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then Liz walks out. Guidance counselor turns to Jimmy and is like, "So what is Alice thinking about for AP classes in order to kind of like get into these amazing schools?" And that's when he's like, "Ooh." And then he turns around. He's like, "Liz, are you still
Liz.
here? Can Liz come back in?" And then she
She
runs
was
back
already
in
there.
with joy on her face,
Yeah.
like, "I'm useful. I want to be doing this." And it just sort of broke my heart because I do think the whole um thing with mothers, and especially in this show, is really grapples with this idea of what it is to be just a mom, and just how much. And I think struggling with, what if I do take joy and find joy in being, quote, just a mom,
That
but I
is
also don't want
enough.
to be just a mom. I don't want to be
Yeah.
seen as just a mom. Um, and
And
yeah, I just thought that really came home in that scene where she was just so sprightly about the whole thing without any credit, but clearly it brought joy, which is I think a theme for us is like, where is your joy coming from?
yeah. Also, like going off of that, how childcare in general, whether you are a nanny or a mother or whatever, is like, it's like, oh, that can't be it for you. That can't be
Yeah.
enough. Or like, what else is there? Or like
Yes.
shame in admitting that it is something that you take joy in or enjoy,
Correct.
because
Correct.
everyone else has this negative, like, oh, you're such a mom or whatever, where it's like,
Totally.
okay, and
Totally.
yeah.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's really
And
frustrating.
like mocking, I mean, a well-written show. The whole show is, I think, perfect, but
Yeah.
there's so
No
many.
critiques.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there's a scene early in the first season too that also, again, going back and watching it with a much like heavier orientation to motherhood, I was just like, this is all so cruel. But there's the classic back and forth from neighbor to neighbor of Jimmy on his porch, Liz on her porch. And basically this is around the time where everyone's decided that Liz should back off and give Jimmy a chance to kind of reinsert himself as Alice's dad, which is all kind of done in a, I don't know, obtuse way, maybe. And Jimmy's distressed and probably drunk and struggling, as he should be. But basically says to Liz, like, back off, like, Alice is not your purpose, like, find your purpose elsewhere. And then literally acts out physically looking around on the porch floor being like, Liz's purpose, where are you? You're not here.
God
I
damn.
felt all of that so much because
Yeah.
she really is, as we mentioned, Liz is, she raised these kids. Her kids are basically off in college, if not beyond. So she's such a theme of this is like, if kids have been that purpose, what happens next?
Yeah.
Anyway, it just was so heavy-handed and painful, and she took it like a champ.
She's incredible.
But I feel like that teed up all of this whole theme of where is her purpose and
Yeah.
what is it to be a mom.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
There is also this idea of, well, two things that, and this, I don't know, not to get too, well, we'll get into it right away, but
Not to get too deep, however.
I know, I don't know what order to go into this, but one is this sort of macro philosophical existential idea that I was having while watching this show. And maybe this was intentional and I'm actually like finally paying attention, but this whole show is about psychology and psychologists professionally, emotionally helping other people figure out their life and become independent and move on and not need them. This is what Liz is doing on her own, for her kids, for all the people in her world. But she gets no credit for it, no power, no income, only grief.
Sarah, that's deep. I didn't think I made that connection, and I didn't even know where it was going until you just said that. Now I'm like, oh, damn.
Yeah. So I'm like, Jimmy, Paul, you think you're fancy?
Yeah.
Like that. I mean, and then this does raise obviously the questions of like, where is value worth? Like if it's something that you can sort of organically learn how to do, is it inherently not worth paying for in the way that a psychologist has gone through a lot of training to be able to treat folks, which, so I don't want to like negate that, but the fundamental purpose and function is kind of the same.
Well, also like, I don't know, in the same way that like stay-at-home moms, right? Like it's like, it sounds like, oh, what was your day like? It was so easy, whatever. And it's like, no, that is a full-time job too. I'm just not being compensated for it. It's
Correct.
the same,
Yes.
like,
Yes.
I just don't get paid. Like,
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
But I should.
Yes. And there's, I forget which episode it is, but Paul Harrison Ford, who is one of my favorite people in the world, if only we knew each other. But Paul, there's a part where he gets a Lifetime Achievement Award and he's all conflicted about whether he wants to go or not, and beautifully ends up not going and going to his grandson's play instead.
What a
But
sweet
his
moment.
friend, who I can't remember if it's the janitor from Scrubs,
Right.
he becomes his friend. His friend says, quote, "Look, Paul, you've spent your whole career helping people. You deserve to be celebrated for it." And I was like, where's Liz's Lifetime Achievement Award, which would say this exact same thing.
Look at all the people you've showed up for, what you've done for all of these people.
Yes.
You just don't get credit for it. If anything, you get,
Totally. And then the last that like relates to this that I was thinking about too was, if this is about validation, and you and I talked about this, I think, when we were discussing Night Bitch, of like where kind of all of this work that's done, but sort of often not seen or validated or valued, and kind of who would we like to be seen by? Like, who would it really mean to be validated by? And I think you mentioned your partner, and I feel similarly about Jason. And in this show, it's so extreme that Liz's husband, Derek, is that person for her, and how much he validates and says
sees her.
Yes, he's the one at the very end towards the end of season 2, after this whole arc of she's helped Alice, she's trying to find something after Alice, she gets involved with the food truck with Sean, which is generally awesome in my opinion. What are the other ones? Oh, she eventually sort of finds her way to helping her gay couple friend, who are some of my favorite characters too. Brian and Charlie end up wanting to adopt a child, and she really helps help them navigate what it is to be a mother and how to interview in these adoption settings. And then she does her photography and her rocks, which turns out the rocks are like based on her real life where she has this weird hobby in real life about these rocks that she's really funny and acerbic about it, where she's like, it's not even worth talking about. But anyway,
I love it.
At the end of all of this, Liz comes around to watching Brian and Charlie's kid like twice a week or something. And Derek says to Liz, it sort of makes me weep a little bit. And he's also a wonderful actor, as they even say in the show.
I'm
that
obsessed
he's someone
with him.
who can just sort of look at you with this twinkle in his eye and say something that's so deeply, wholly full and meaningful and caring and generous. He says to Liz, "I never understood why you look down on yourself for just being a mom. Yes, you're an amazing photographer, the world's only rock tumbler, but you love raising kids. That purpose you've been looking for, that's it. That is your gift." And she's, Liz about it, so she's kind of crying, but also like, whatever, I don't need you.
Yeah, sure, I'll do it. Yeah.
But I think about where value and validation needs to be coming from. And like, yes, society needs to give it to us and we should be getting paychecks, but how foundational it is to have a partner that believes in you and sees you and values and lifts up what is important to you, regardless of what society thinks, even if it was just the rocks, you know what I mean? So I loved seeing that. And I also think that's it's sort of a dismissed, or can often be a dismissed thing, of like a husband loving the wife and that makes everyone feel better. But I do think that it is really foundational to having your partner value what you find, what you're good at and what you enjoy doing. So anyway, that was my big aha moment, Oprah.
Come on.
That's all I got. Wait, what else do we have?
I feel like I didn't realize how obviously, like you said, this show is not advertised as like a show about motherhood, but that there's so many different unconventional mother figures in it. So you have like Liz, who is the most obvious conversation about motherhood, but then you have Gaby, who it's almost this like role reversal thing of she's grappling with balancing her life, her identity, partnerships, whatever, and her mom in older age, right?
Yes.
And role reversal of like now she has this opportunity, or I don't know, is being forced into being her mom's caregiver.
Correct.
And what kind of obligation do we have to do that, to return the favor and to show up for your parents in that way? Or is it okay if you decide not to do that? And how do you still maintain a relationship? And then, like setting up those boundaries.
Yes.
I thought that was such an interesting, I don't know, definitely something that resonates with me, where it's like, I probably, up until I was kind of surprised she let that go for so long. Backstories that her mother is getting older and has like cataract surgery or something, and her sister joins the army, and she was the one that was caring for her mother. So then Gaby's mother assumes, like, I'm going to move in with you and I'm going to stay with you in your gorgeous house and whatever. And, what are the implications of that on Gaby and her life, and figuring out who she is and finding a partner, So I thought that was so interesting too.
Yes.
And something I definitely would do.
Yes. Yes.
Like, be like, no, this is fine. Come on.
Yes.
Don't even worry about it. Like, I'll just put
Yes.
all of my needs aside and show up for you because you did it for me. So I feel like that is how I can return the favor,
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I know. And the nerd. So again, spoiler
yes.
alert within a spoiler alert that was already spoiled. The alert was given, whatever. But Gaby says, sure, like eventually feels so guilty and ends up saying, Mom, yes, come stay here. And then shortly thereafter decides, I actually can't, this isn't good.
Like,
This
as she's
won't be
packing up
good
the
for
house.
both of us. It's better if you stay here with your friends and I don't know if she said work, but basically your whole life is in this other place. You moving in with me is not necessarily the right thing. And they find like sort of full-time nurse help. And this woman, they do a very nice job of it being both like heavy, but also keeping it light, where this nurse in one moment is very critical and judgy towards Gaby, being like, I think your mother's doing very well given that her own daughter like abandoned her.
Yeah.
And she's like, I watch my mom because I'm a decent person. You know what I mean? And then they have some other like witty comment back and forth. But I do think that it's part of like another theme across the show, which is this separation between parents and children, and how that's a sign of or how to hold, how I guess their relationship evolves, but it kind of really requires some level of separation for it as a sign of success. I think even Liz says at some point to Brian and Charlie, sort of preparing them for what parenting is kind of like, you give yourself over to these children and they become everything for you. And then if you do your job right, then they turn around and are basically like, don't talk to me anymore. Like the goal is that they can stand on your own 2 feet and then you're supposed to move on like that doesn't matter. It's so interesting to me that there's so many ways that parents and children have separated, or that they're showing that separation in so many ways in the show, whether it's Gaby deciding not actually good for my mom to be living with me and being able to say that. And then they're obviously going to grapple with what that means.
The ramifications of that. Yeah.
And then you have Tia, Alice's mom, separating from Alice through a car crash and dying.
That was my other conversation thing.
I know. We'll get, And
like,
then, yes.
Yes. You're so right.
Yes. And how in this separation / absence, like how do all parties navigate that? And I also think one element of it that has shown me is that that's the inevitable end of it. Like there's a role in some ways, you will always have a parent. You will never not have a mother or a father or a parent of some sort, but how they show up for you will absolutely change and will probably never be. It's a unique time when you are 0 to 10, 15, pre-college, whatever it is. And how it kind of normalized, as I'm thinking about it out loud now, that is the arc. But yeah, and you finding other people to sort of stand in for those, or learning how to mother yourself. I don't know, it makes me think of the vacuum story from last time, where the relationship with these people that are obviously we are who they are because of them. That relationship isn't a stagnant thing. And then there are different ways that we can see these parent figures continue to show up for us after the fact.
Yeah, and the fact that Tia had formed these relationships and bonds with Gaby and Liz, and that like even in her passing, like because of that, that's a gift that she gave Alice by like having those relationships. Then she was able to have like mother figures and people in her life. That was like a big thing that I was going to say, like the absence of motherhood and the impact that has on your other relationships, right? Like the impact that it has between Alice and Jimmy, and like the tension and expectations and pressures.
Who fills the void? There's something interesting too about how Jimmy kind of learns how to be both mother and father over time.
Sure.
And if mother is sort of classically a little bit more emotionally in tune, always present, sensitive, vulnerable, that is something he learns to do. I even think of Sean's dad, who was starts off as this sort of macho aggressive character and then
Sure.
over time becomes more vulnerable. And again, these are like gross generalizations. Men are vulnerable on their own anyway, but I think, and it's also true that a woman tends to lead with those strategies as a parent, potentially.
Yeah.
Not always.
I do love watching that side of Jimmy trying to show up in those emotional ways, but like so unable in like the most adorable and endearing way to me of like to contain the excitement of like, I don't know, like on her birthday, it's like, oh, we're going to have this party and like, can we sing to you? And I don't want to sing because then once we do that, this is going to be over. Like, it's so sweet. And she's just like, no, chum. He's like, right. Or, you know, the car key video. Do you remember that? Like,
yes.
She gets
oh my God. Yes.
I just think that is so sweet that like he really is doing his best to show up and that like meet her where she's at and what she needs and respect that. And also recognizing that like he did recognize I messed up. Like I didn't show up for you in the ways that you needed it. And so I understand there's consequences to that. And like I need to earn back my, you know, the respect. But oh my God, those moments are like so sweet. It's so like interesting that you would think, or at least I would think I would not like him because it's like, look what you did to your daughter. Like you made so many bad choices, but like his character is so endearing and sweet.
I know.
And Liz really keeps him in check, and I love that.
Yes. Tell me more about the unconventional mothers or these other folks that show up as mothers. I do think that is very true, and it builds on this idea of it takes a village. But I think you were also really leaning into, which I loved, this idea that the relationships that the parents have are what create the village that becomes for any reason, like proxy parent, mother, or take on different elements of the mother role. I think about Gaby stepping in and doing a lot of the classic kind of girl mom thing of taking her to they have like sex talks and they go clothes shopping and they talk about, I love this, they talk about their biggins.
Obsessed.
Which I don't know that term. I don't even know what that means.
Is it a thing? I don't know. Like, yeah.
There are so many funny things in there, and how that's all. There are sometimes I think that it's really helpful that it's not the classic parent that is having these conversations. I think actually there are many other ways that this is true, but in the role that nannies play in our family's life and how the kinds of conversations that our kids will have with those amazing individuals versus how that conversation would go if it was with me. And how that's all really important to growing into ourselves.
Totally. Yeah. I just loved that. I don't know. I was almost like envious of this group that they had, that there was different, like almost like different pillars or what would be a good word for it? There's just like different parents for different things for Alice. Like when needing to talk about boy things or whatever, it was like Gaby, and needing to like, you know, have literally just like a warm meal and have dinner. Yes. She had Liz. Like there was all of these people in her life, Paul, to talk about the emotions, or like her dad, you know. And I just loved that like that ripple community that like because of her parents and because of who they chose to surround themselves with and everything. And I'm like, oh, look at all these people that like, I don't know, you could be a mom and not be like a birth mom. It's just a non-traditional mom, right? Like Gaby serves a lot of the purposes or like expectations or roles or whatever.
Yes.
A mom, but she's not a birth mom. She doesn't have her own children, but she still can show up in that way. I love that.
And so well. Yeah. Yeah. One potentially last thing, depending on if your roommate is shouting at you, but
can you hear him?
Just a little bit, which I think it's my mom ears.
Yeah, no,
no one else can hear. And I also can tell. I also feel for you. It just is immediately like thoughts escape in a good way. Like that's what happens.
Yeah,
it's genetically so, or biologically so, whatever. This made me think of you and a general theme about this joy. But I wanted to flag there was a conversation that Gaby had with Liz, because Liz goes to Gaby in this quest for meaning and purpose. And she says, Gaby raises this concept of psychological egoism, the idea that all behavior is motivated by self-interest and we are all inherently selfish and do whatever it is that makes us happy. And then she said, and to this, Liz is like, am I selfish? Am I not selfish? I'm trying to be a better person. And also figuring out what makes me tick. And Gaby then continues and says, so it's up to us to figure out where your joy lives. Is it in doing stuff for other people, or is it in doing stuff for yourself? And I thought about that related to our last question of where is your joyfulness? And I said post Miami mentioning, I was also like, I also feel like I should say that I do take joy in my kids, or just the
Sure.
idea of joy for, maybe this was the night bitch conversation. The idea of joy for me feels so tangled up in taking joy in the joy of others versus what is purely for me. I thought
Yes.
it was very interesting to frame
Uh,
that of where is your joy? Is your joy in literally, quote, being if all joy is selfish or everything we do is inherently selfish, do we
yeah.
want to focus on, and ideally, it doesn't have to be either or, we can all do all of these things, but is your joy in doing stuff for other people, or is it in doing stuff for yourself? And maybe the important thing or message for me is like, we need to find a little bit of both.
Yep. I think it's so like that resonates so deep with me because sometimes I similarly have trouble separating the two. And it almost comes off as like if you were to say, yeah, my joy is like when I fill other people's cups and like show up for them, it almost comes off as like sometimes to other people like performative or inauthentic and like, no, there's no way that that could be true.
Yes.
And sometimes it is true, but then it's like, okay, if I take that out of the dialogue, like then where is my joy from this line? Sometimes it is
Yes.
hard to identify, like just you, just Sarah, just be like, I don't
Totally.
know. Sometimes like
Yes.
they're so intertwined.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Well, amazing. I'm excited for the third season. I think it's a
Yes.
wonderful
Do we know
show.
when it's coming out?
I don't know, but I was bummed that it ended before the new year. I was
Yeah.
hoping there'd be more episodes, but more to come. I think maybe I didn't, well, I mentioned in the beginning how this was Liz's character is based on Christa herself in real life, and influenced by her relationship with Bill, her real husband,
Wow.
who she jokes, there's some amazing article where she's like, if Bill could put me in a baby Bjorn and carry me around all the time, like he would, like
Obsessed.
she describes him as someone who just like wanders after her all the time. And I
I
thought it was
love it.
sweet, but she was desperate to be in this show, partly because she had, I guess, taken some time away from acting and work
Huh.
before jumping back into through this. So I thought there were sort of, obviously, I think it's best when people personally relate to the topic of whatever their
Yeah.
art and work is. Alrighty. So in the conclusion, thank you. That was, I appreciated being able to watch. I keep wanting to say Severance, which is not right. Shrinking.
Same, but different. I also can't
We'll
believe,
do that also later.
I don't know if you mentioned this just to me or if we were recording, but the fact that you watched it over in 2 speed is wild to me.
It's true. I watched it in double
Yeah.
time, which is a little less soothing for the soul because everything seems like panicked all the
So
time. Like we gotta get yes. Yes. I know. It was too much. Do not recommend. Stay at the normal. And then when I put it back to 1, I was like, wow, are they slurring their words? What is happening?
me listening to our podcast.
Yes,
Did I have
I know.
stroke? It's really funny.
So anyways, thank you for listening to us slur. Please, as I said, follow and review, like and subscribe. Spotify, Apple Podcasts. The following really matters. We are also on Instagram at The Mothers Pod, so give us a shout out there. YouTube is coming. Nominate guests. If there's anyone that anyone particularly wants us to be reaching out to, let us know. hello@themothersmedia.co. And then our last parting words discussion, joyfulness.
Yeah.
Where's your joyfulness this week?
This week, ironically, given the last conversation, like I feel
Rocks.
guilty saying it, but rock tumbling. No,
I know.
just having a few moments here and there this week to myself, which has been really nice. Like being okay and content and deserving of a little bit of quiet time for me, which is really nice.
Good for you. The little quiet time. Someone,
Just
I think
little.
I was getting ready for a wedding somewhere, and the person doing makeup was a mother too, and she was like, read something about how if you can just once a day find 5 minutes, maybe even less, maybe 1 minute, where you lie down with your feet up, how that just really is a reset.
The standard is so low. And is it actually 1 minute because that's just realistic, or because that's actually what you need?
Exactly. And if you work really hard, you can get it down to just 30 seconds.
A marker of success is.
I know. Yes. My joyfulness, I will say, is in, I didn't mean to be stealing this from yours last week, but I think connection. I'm having a little bit of fear in continuing to grow this podcast and brand and concept. And I build up a lot of expectations in my head. But every time I actually interact with a real human about it and talk to them as real humans, I feel comforted and find it joyful. So I think that will be my joyfulness will be in meeting real people and talking to real people and enjoying the gift that is the ability to just hang with folks.
That's great. Look at you.
Well, I love you. I'm so proud of everything you're doing.
Love you.
Congrats on the job. Congrats on
Thanks,
sort of
girl.
getting babies to sleep. Congrats on
try.
showing up anyway. You're a hero. I love this shirt also. The moon
Thanks.
with the
It's a
eyeballs.
Thank
It's a
you.
set. Tell me more about
it
the
was
set.
all I could
Is
wear.
it full body?
Well, it's pants and top, and it was all I could wear when I was pregnant because I was massive. And so, yeah, it's very cozy. Although, can you hear it? It like
No,
makes
but
a
I can
noise.
imagine.
Yeah,
Is it swishy swish? I love that.
yeah. I wish it was like I wish it was like linen, but it's like like
Is it breathable? Do we sweat through it? Yeah.
like it's like no,
I
I
know
could
that
sweat
sound.
through it. It's swishy. It's like Nike-y. I don't know.
Wait, I feel like I
But-
need a visual. I need some picture of you with the top and bottom. That's
Oh
amazing.
my god, I'm just like, yeah. I'll
Next
send you.
time I see your child, I'm gonna have to wear that so he'll recognize.
I actually have two of them, so I can let you wear the other one. It's white, like opposite colors, but
Perfect twins profile pictures.
the mother's photo shoot. Goodbye.